ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session. First of all, होली की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं. We wish you very, very joyful Holi and the year ahead. Be all happy, healthy, and cheerful. Now, we will start with two questions. One, Tarun has asked a question, and there's one more question which has come to me. And then we will go to the remaining four verses of Ishavasya Upanishad. So the first question which Tarun has asked that how can we attain moksha or unity with the Supreme by following the two different routes, that is Sambhuti and Asambhuti. Now, actually, we don't have to follow the two different routes. First of all, whatever Sambhuti, whatever manifestation we see, that is actually arising from Asambhuti, from Nirgun Nirakar Brahman. Nirgun Nirakar Brahma is the foundation of all manifestation. But without understanding that manifestation, we cannot actually understand the non-manifest Supreme. Let me give you an example. Like in Islam, they do not believe in what you call, worshipping the God in a form. And they believe in absolutely Nirgun. Now, the problem there is that they do not understand what is Nirgun because they have not gone through that route. And therefore, their entire prayer, we don't know how it is done, to whom it is addressed, how it is addressed. And that is why after prayer, you see they come out and start throwing stones. Now, that is happening only because they do not fully understand what is Nirgun Nirakar Brahma. If you understand the manifest world first, if you understand the Sagun Sakar Brahman in the form of a, of a temple, or in the form of this universe, manifest universe, and then we slowly go backwards, that where does this originate? Like I'm talking to you, my words are manifest. Now those manifest words are coming from where? They are coming from silence, from my moan. And that moan is coming from where? That is coming from the consciousness. So ultimately, when you go to the backward route, you reach the same consciousness, which is the foundation of all the manifestation. So the best way to understand that non-manifest is to understand the manifest and then do the backward journey to non-manifest. Then you will understand both. And that understanding will tell you that this entire manifest world is also pervaded by the Supreme. And then your conviction will become strong. So this is why these two sutras or two mantras in Ishavasya Upanishad, they talk about these things, that if you go directly to Asambhut, then you will be in darkness. If you go directly to Sambhut, then also you will be in the darkness. But you have to understand both. And the order of understanding is, first you have to understand the Sambhut, which is manifest, which you can grasp through your sense organs. Your 5 sense organs can grasp what is Sambhut, what is manifest. And then you do the backward journey, and through that backward journey you will understand that the foundation on which all this manifest world is located is actually the same consciousness, the supreme consciousness, which is non-manifest. So this is the way we have to understand it. And this is what I think is the intention of the rishis in this Upanishad. So if you go directly only to a Sambhut without understanding the Sambhut, then you will be actually not in a position to fully grasp the importance of a Sambhut and the power of a Sambhut. And that is what I feel happens in some of the faiths. Now, the second question is that the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad starts with Ishavasya Midam Sarvam, that the Supreme is everywhere. Now, there's a debate since times immemorial that can you show me the God? Where is God? If you say he's pervading everywhere, show me where he is. In fact, there is a story that even Swami Vivekanand, when he went to his guru, he asked his first question is, can you show me the God? And answer was yes. So how do we recognize the presence of the God? Because unless we recognize the presence of the God, our thought in God will not be strong enough. We will not be able to give attention or meditate on the Supreme unless we are fully convinced that God is actually pervading the entire universe. And in a way, this question is related to what Tarunji has asked, and we discussed that earlier. So, how do we understand the God and how do we see his manifestation? Now, if science believes that it is all accidental, then there will be no order anywhere. I don't have to speak consistently. I can speak on anything in between, and whatever you ask me could be irrelevant to me because my answer could be totally irrelevant if everything is accidental. So, in this world, there is an order. We can see that order. For example, in the solar system, the sun moves in a particular way. There is a duration of the day, there is a duration of the night, there is duration of a season. There is, with every season, the manifestation on the earth, the manifestations of life on the earth keep changing. So there's an order there. Imagine if the sun doesn't arise for 10 days, decides not to come, if it is accidental, then what would happen? Then the whole universe or all manifest life will, come to annihilation. Similarly, if you look at moon, there are phases, there is a order in that. Everything appears in a very orderly, systematic manner. If you look at the water cycle, there is this cycle. With the heat, the water goes up in the sky, forms into clouds. What we were talking about, that there's an order in this universe, in everything which we see. If there were no order, then obviously the stars can collide and there could be total chaos in the universe. Even in our own life, there is a order. A human being reproduces in a particular way. We also have a childhood. When we are child, then we become, teenagers, and then we become adult. And during the adult period, we have this feeling of, love and sexual desire, which results into reproduction of the species. And then slowly, we become, old, and finally the death comes. This is the order which is followed everywhere in all cases of humanity as well as other species of life. And they reproduce themselves. There's an order there. Apart from that, if you look at the life forces, there's a very important feature of all the life forces which we should understand. When we make a car, we have to put the various, components from outside. For example, you make an engine, there are maybe 50 different parts. You put them together and then the engine is formed. If you make a car, maybe there are 500 different parts. You join them and it becomes a car. But in case of a human being or a living species, we don't put their hands and eyes and ears separately. Nobody does that. They evolve from inside. There's a force inside which evolves and which converts you, which gives you hands, which gives you feet, which gives you fingers, which gives you nose, which gives you eyes, which makes your head. It automatically happens from inside. How? Not only in human being, but in all species of life. It happens because there is a force inside. There is a life force inside, which evolves into a particular species of life, whether it is lion or whether it is elephant or human being or even a plant or a tree. Eh? So all that is happening from inside, and that is the source. The source is that supreme. That supreme source gives you all those things automatically. Nobody has to put them together. And that is where the manifestation of the supreme is visible. So the first manifestation is visible in the order. If things are orderly in the world, obviously there is a regulator. And that regulator is called the supreme. The second one is that if the life is manifesting in variety of forms, millions of forms, and it is reproducing itself, and it is, evolving from a small little fetus into a full-fledged human being without any outside support, obviously there's a life force inside. So that's the manifestation of life. The third manifestation of life is that, for example, I'm able to talk, I'm able to think. So one is the bodily manifestation. The next one is manifestation, that you are able to think, you are able to talk, you are able to express yourself in the form of, not only the language, but also in the form of paintings and poetry and, many other manifestations of life. Now that manifestation also happens because we have life force inside, which gives us that creativity. That creativity comes from that life force. So all those things prove that there is a force which governs this universe. Things are not happening accidentally, as Charles Darwin said at some stage. It is not accidental that a particular cell came into being and the organisms were formed. No, there is a regulator, and that regulator is Nirgun Brahman. That is pervading everywhere, and that is the reference when the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad starts with that regulator is everywhere. When you see a seed of a plant or a tree, you do not see the seed there. You do not see the plant there, sorry, or the tree there. You don't see the fruit, you don't see the leaves. But when you put that seed into the earth, with the appropriate conditions, it becomes a big tree. Leaves come, branches come, flowers come, fruit come. We did not see any of those in that seed. They existed in non-manifest form. And that is how the Supreme exists in non-manifest form everywhere, in ourselves also. Because when the fetus is formed, You do not see the eyes, you do not see the ears, you do not see the nose, you do not see the hands, feet, nothing. And then from that form, it evolves into a full-fledged human being. And then slowly, slowly, your mind and intellect develops. And from a child, you become adult. So all that process happens because of the presence of the Supreme in each one of the life species. And that is the proof that the Supreme is everywhere. He is omnipotent. That is why not only omnipotent, he is also omnipresent. He is omniscient because all the thinking and the intellectual prowess which we acquire is possible only because of that. If that presence is removed from us, not only our body cannot sustain, our whole intellectual prowess disappears immediately. So all these are very clear indications of the supreme presence everywhere. He is omnipresent, he is omnipotent, and he is omniscient. So I thought I will, mention this before we go to the last four mantras of this Upanishad. Now, in fact, to some extent, these four mantras are connected with the assumption that Supreme is existing everywhere. Now, before we take the verse number 16, I'd like to, state one more fact that when the Vedas and the Upanishads were written, in those times, Ram, Krishna, and Shiva concept was not existing. They were not, Ram and Krishna were not born, and Shiva was not, you know, in a way talked that we talk today. It was talked in the form of uh, that is omnipresent, he is everywhere, but he was not talked in the way we talk today. So Ram was not born, Krishna was not born, and Shiva was not in existence in the way we talk today. And that is why there is no reference in entire Vedas and Upanishads to Ram and Krishna, and in a very limited way to Shiva, but in a very different way. That Shiva is Shiva and Shakti, they talk about those things. That Shiva is omnipresent power everywhere, and Shakti is the one which works to manifest that power. So it's in a very different context that Shiva Shakti appear, but Ram and Krishna do not appear anywhere in the Vedic literature because they were not born by that time. And that is why when they refer to the supreme power, either they use the word Brahman or they used other natural forces which were manifest in the world. So sometimes they use the sun, they used the Lord of Death, they used air, they used fire. So these were the manifestations which were available to the Vedic seers, and they used these manifestations to refer to the Supreme. And this is what is happening in verse number 16, 17, 18. Now, in verse number 16, rather, let's start with 15 actually, the four verses 15, 16, 17, and 18. Now, verse number 15 says, आदित्य मंडलस्थ ब्रह्म का मुख ज्योतिर्मय पात्र से ढका हुआ है। हे पूजन, मुझ सत्य धर्मा को आत्मा की उपलब्धि कराने के लिए तू उसे उघाड़ दे। नाउ आदित्य मंडल, Aditya Mandal is the reference here, that shining force. Now, there are two kinds of shining force which have been talked about in Vedic literature and also in Bhagavad Gita. One is the self-illuminating supreme, whose glow is so strong that it is higher than thousands and thousands of suns if they appear together. This has also been mentioned in Bhagavad Gita in, I think, chapter 11, verse number 12, which is clearly saying that it is the description by Sanjay to Dhritarashtra, that when he saw this uh, supreme manifestation of Krishna, he says that it is the glow which is the light which is coming, it is greater than thousands of suns appearing together. So that is one manifestation of light, that is light from the Supreme. The second is the manifestation of light from the sun and other objects like sun. Now that other manifestation of the sun and moon, for example, these are secondary. They originally come from the Supreme, like the light from the light of the moon is also, we recognize it now that it's secondary. It comes from the sun and reflected by the moon. Similarly, the light of the sun is also reflecting the light of the Supreme. The light of the Supreme is reflected in the sun, and the sun's light is reflected in the moon. So this is the manifestation, this is how it works. The original source of all the lights is the Supreme. And that is what Lord Krishna mentioned very clearly in chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, that, he appears like the sun and he is the moon and he is, the power of the earth, that everything arises from him. So here the reference here is that supreme light is now covered with the light of the sun. And Mujh Satya Karma, the person who has worked very hard to become pure, who had removed all the vratige from my conduct and my behavior, I should be able to see the Supreme, and therefore he is requesting the sun god to remove his light so that he can see the Supreme light. Now let's, there are different explanation of these verses. What I am giving is my explanation, how I understand it. You take the example of clouds. Now look, no clouds can be formed without sun. It is the sun which gives heat. The heat, converts the water into water vapor, and water vapor ultimately converts into clouds. And the same clouds which are arising out of the sun are covering the sun. The sun is not visible because of those clouds, though they arise from the sun because of the sun. Similarly things happen here, that when the sun is regulating the universe, because of that sunlight, because of that regulatory process, which will be explained in the next verse, we are not able to understand the Supreme. And therefore he is the saint, the Rishi, is requesting the sun god that if you allow me to see the Supreme, kindly remove your light so that I can see the Supreme's light. This is what the meaning is. So all the four verses here are basically the prayers, because the main part of the Upanishad has been covered till verse number 14. 15, 16, 17, 18, they are the prayers which are directed to different natural gods, to tell them that if you allow me then I will be able to see the Supreme. So please cooperate with me. This is the meaning here. Now, the next verse, number 16, is much more clearer in that direction. He Jagat Poshak Surya. Yeah. Pushan is also the name of the sun because he is nurturing the entire universe. Surya, Prajapati has also been referred. Surya has also been referred in the, like in Ishavasya, sorry, in Prasna Upanishad. There's a big reference to Prajapati. And then the Rishi is explaining that sun is the Prajapati. We will talk about that when we go to that Upanishad. So here it says, He Jagat Poshak Surya, हे एकाकी गमन करने वाले, हे यम, हे प्रजापति नंदन, तू अपनी किरणों को उठा ले, तेरा जो अतिशय कल्याणमय रूप है उसे मैं देखता हूं, यह तो आदित्य मंडलस्थ पुरुष है, वह मैं हूं. Now, these verses are not that easy to understand even today. Even Sanskrit scholars find them difficult to understand. But here the reference is clear. The first one reference is to the sun, the other reference is to the yam, the body of. Now, yam is the regulator. He regulates everybody slowly ages and ultimately dies. So that process is regulated by yam, but the sun is an important part of that because the sun is the one which gives you the day and then the night and then the month and then the year and then what you call yuga, whatever. Because the movement of the sun actually keeps moving the time. The time is, we count the time with the sun. The time, there's nothing like time, nothing existing like time. The time is actually counted with the movement of the sun. And therefore, ekaki gaman, sun is moving all alone. And hey yam is the one which is regulating the life and death on this universe, and which is also supported by the sun god, by the Surya, by the sun, by the Posak, also called Prajapati. So he is again saying that तू अपनी किरणों को हटा ले, that you remove your shine from me so that I can see the Supreme Lord. Now, the the saint here or the bhakt here is trying to request the natural gods and goddesses that you help me in recognizing or realizing the Supreme in my own self or in the universe. So this is again a prayer both to the sun god and to the god of death, Yam, that you please support me and cooperate with me so that I can realize the supreme power in myself and also in the world around me. Now, the next verse, verse number 17 or mantra 17, is again a prayer to what we call pranvayu. The pranic energy in our body is governed by air, by wind. We have these four kinds of pranic energy, five kinds of pranic energy. The mukhya pran, that is when we breathe in and out, it is linked with the universe. So we are linked with the universe. And then the saman pran, which takes the food inside and helps in the digestive process. Then we have apan pran, which is actually taking the waste out and also makes our reproductive organs active. And then we have Vyan Pran, which takes the nutrients in our body to all the parts, to every single a particle of the body and makes it alive, keeps it alive. That is why we feel, life in every part of the body. Sometimes a particular part of the body becomes numb. It means the blood is not circulating properly. The nutrients which are supposed to be circulating are not reaching there. We say oxygen is not reaching, but basically it is the Vyan Pran which is not reaching there. It has been explained in Prasnopanishad that there are 72 million nadis. There are 101 original, then 100 divided into 100 each, 10,000, and then the 10,000 each divided into 72,000. So there are 72 million nadis which are circulating this Vyan Pran into the entire body. And then there is Udan Pran, which takes, when the person dies, he takes away the Suksham Sarir and goes away with the soul. So basically, this is governed by the Vayu. So here there is a reference to the Vayu, that अब मेरा प्राण सर्वात्मक वायु रूप सूत्रात्मा को प्राप्त हो और यह शरीर भस्म शेष हो जाए. That this is requesting the pranic energy, the Vayu, that you help me in such a way that my body becomes irrelevant and I become relevant only purely in consciousness. हे मेरे संकलात्मक मन, अब तू स्मरण कर, अपने किए हुए को स्मरण कर, अब तू स्मरण कर, अपने किए हुए को स्मरण कर. And then once the body becomes irrelevant, the pranic energy becomes niskriya or becomes inactive. At that stage, he is telling that my mind, now mind will not be active once the pranic energy is not there, but he is referring to the mind of the mind, that whatever I remembered all through my life, I remembered that Supreme all through my life, that he is omnipresent, he is everywhere. Now that should keep repeating in my consciousness. That is what I understand is the meaning of this verse. That in both these, in all the three verses here, the Rishi is telling that, hey sun god, hey lord of death, hey pranic regulator Vayu, you help me in such a way that I can reach my pure consciousness. And all that, avaran or all that curtain of Maya is removed from my, eyesight. And I am able to see directly the supreme consciousness. So that is what he is referring here. And then the last verse, last mantra. Hey Agni. Now here the prayer is to the Agni. Now Agni, actually the sun is also a form of Agni. But Agni is far more pervasive than sun. For example, you put your clothes to dry in the sun, they dry up. But if some clothes have become extremely dirty and you want to destroy them, then you have to put the fire. You just put them in the fire, they are destroyed. So the fire is, far more extreme than the sun. But sun is a manifestation of Agni. But Agni is far more devastating. It is the final element which cleans the entire process. Because when fire takes place in any place, everything is reduced to ashes. And all the manifestation which we see, it disappears in the space. It becomes invisible. For example, a large city goes into fire, turns into fire. Nothing will be left apart from a few, kilograms of ashes. All the rest which you were manifesting, all these high-rise buildings and furniture and objects and cars and everything which you see on this earth, they will all disappear into space and they become non-manifest. So this is the power of Agni. Agni is not only rising upwards all the time. It's the only element which rises upwards automatically. It indicates that we should rise. It also gives us light so that we can see things. The darkness disappears. But at the same time, it is the final resort of cleaning the most unclean things in the world. Because then it sends them back to the non-manifest and then they reappear again and then they manifest themselves in different form. So here, हे अग्नि, हमें कर्म फल योग के लिए संन्यास से ले चल, कर्म फल योग के लिए संन्यास से ले चल। तू समस्त ज्ञान और कर्मों को जानने वाला है, अग्नि को बोल रहे हैं। हमारे पाखंड पूर्ण पापों को नष्ट कर, पाखंड पूर्ण पापों को नष्ट कर। हम तेरे लिए अनेकों नमस्कार करते हैं, अनेकों नमस्कार करते हैं। Now the power of Agni has also been explained in verse number 37 of Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4, which says that, हे अर्जुन, जैसे प्रज्वलित अग्नि ईंधन को भस्म कर देता है, वैसे ही ज्ञान रूप अग्नि संपूर्ण कर्मों को भस्ममय कर देती है। ज्ञान रूप अग्नि सब कर्मों को भस्म कर देती है। तो here there is a reference here by the rishi that whatever karma I have done, some of them may be because I told lies, I behaved in a very indiscreet manner, and that led me to do a lot of pap, lot of sins, lot of undesirable actions. So he is requesting the Agni, the another very important natural force that help me in destroying all those karmas so that I can reach the Supreme. I can realize the Supreme. So here in these four mantras, the Rishi is actually making a prayer to the natural forces. Today we make such prayer to Ram and Krishna and Shiva. But in those days, those, births had not taken place. And therefore, the prayer was always addressed to the natural forces. And amongst those natural forces, these were the most important forces. And that is why the Rishi is addressing to them that please cooperate with me so that I can actually recognize and realize the nature of the Supreme, which is non-manifest, which is all the time Nirgun Nirakar, but it is possible only when this veil of Maya, which is covering all my sense organs, is removed with your help. So this is what these four mantras tell us. Ultimately, the first mantra starts with the most important part, that the Supreme is pervading everywhere. And then we should not consider this universe as our property. We should use it only as much as we need. And we should do karmas, but we should do karmas without expectation, without any, expecting any return in terms of reciprocity. And then he talks about vidya, avidya, talks about sambhuti, all those things. And now finally, he is requesting the natural forces that you remove your power of Maya and cooperate with me so that I can realize the supreme good. So this is how I interpret these four mantras, last four mantras, that the Rishi is telling all of us that the supreme is omnipresent, he is everywhere. And to recognize that supreme, we also need the support of the subordinate powers. Like if you want to meet the prime minister of the country, then you need the support of subordinates who are working under him, so that they can give you, whether you deserve it, first of all, and secondly, they can give you a time, to meet the supreme, the prime minister. Similarly, here, the forces of nature, which are operating on behalf of the supreme, the sun, the yam, the air, the Agni, they are all operating on behalf of the Supreme, and therefore the Rishi is asking their support so that he can actually see the Supreme or realize the Supreme. So we conclude Ishavasya Upanishad today. I thank you profoundly for suggesting that we should start this Upanishad and for listening to this very carefully. But we will continue to discuss these things. This is not that we concluded, does not mean that we will not discuss. This is part and parcel of our learning. We shall continue to learn from this great Upanishad as we continue in our process of spiritual advancement. Thank you.